Snow fell in soft, shimmering flakes under the glow of streetlights, turning the city into a quiet painting of white and gold. Inside a small diner on the corner of Maple Street, a woman in a red coat sat by the window, her fingers curled around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. She glanced toward the door again, just as the bell chimed and another customer walked in, not the one she was waiting for. She exhaled softly, eyes falling to the untouched slice of apple pie in front of her. The whipped cream had melted long ago. It was Christmas Eve, and the clock above the counter read 9 p.m. Her blind date was over an hour late. A couple in the booth beside her whispered, "He's not coming, honey. You should go home." But she didn't move. She smiled politely, looked out the window at the snow swirling beyond the glass, and whispered to herself, maybe he just got held up. Something, she couldn't explain what, told her to wait. And somewhere across town, a man was sprinting down a slippery sidewalk, one hand holding a little boy's mitten, the other wiping melting snow from his eyes, praying he wasn't too late for the only chance he had to change his lonely life. Daniel Carter hadn't been on a date in 7 years. In truth, he hadn't lived much at all since his wife passed away. His days were built around survival, fixing cars, paying bills, keeping his little boy fed and safe. Life had turned into a series of shifts, obligations, and quiet nights filled with exhaustion. But when his coworker Jenny insisted on setting him up with someone, he'd reluctantly agreed. "Her name's Olivia," Jenny had said, handing him a napkin with a phone number scribbled across it. "She's a friend of my cousin. Trust me, Daniel, she's not like the women you're imagining. She's kind, down to earth, and she's been through her own battles. You two might just understand each other." He'd laughed it off at first. "Jenny, look at me. I'm a mechanic who smells like motor oil half the day. What would a woman like that want with me?" Jenny rolled her eyes. "A good man, maybe." So against his better judgment, Daniel said yes. He'd promised to meet Olivia at the diner at 8 p.m. sharp. But life, as usual, had other plans. That evening, just as he was about to leave, his 7-year-old son Liam came running into the kitchen, holding a torn piece of paper in his little hands. "Daddy, look, I made you a Christmas card." Daniel smiled, taking the drawing. It was of a stick figure man and a little boy holding hands beside a Christmas tree. Across the top, written in crayon, were the words, "Me and Daddy, best team ever." His heart swelled. "This is perfect, buddy." But moments later, the phone rang. It was his babysitter. "Daniel, I'm so sorry, I can't make it tonight. My sister went into labor. I've got to go to the hospital." His heart sank. He looked at the clock. 7:15 p.m. There was no way to find a replacement now. He quickly called his mother, who lived across town. "Mom, can you watch Liam for a few hours? Please." Her tired but loving voice came through the line. "Of course, honey. Bring him over. But drive safe. The roads are icy." By the time he bundled Liam in his winter coat, found his lost mitten, and scraped the frost from the windshield, it was already 7:45. The roads were jammed with last-minute Christmas shoppers. Red brake lights lined the streets like a trail of frustration. Daniel tapped the steering wheel nervously, watching the clock crawl forward. "Daddy, why are you in such a hurry?" Liam asked sleepily from the back seat. Daniel smiled through his worry. "Daddy just has somewhere special to be tonight. Maybe I'll meet someone nice." Liam's eyes twinkled. "Like a friend." "Yeah, buddy, like a friend." When he finally reached his mother's house, it was 8:25. He kissed Liam's forehead, whispered, "Be good," and ran back to his truck. His mother called out from the doorway, "Don't rush too much. She'll wait if she's the right one." He wanted to believe that. But with every red light, every snow-covered detour, doubt crept deeper into his chest. What if she'd already left? What if she thought he didn't care? By the time he parked outside the diner, it was 8:55 p.m. Through the fogged-up window, he could see her, Olivia, sitting alone, staring out into the snow. She looked calm, elegant, completely out of his league. His hands trembled as he adjusted the collar of his old, second-hand suit jacket. It didn't quite fit right. He'd borrowed it from his brother years ago, and it had since gone out of style. But it was all he had. He looked down at his boots, scuffed and salt-stained, then up at his reflection in the diner's glass door. He saw a tired man with worry in his eyes, a man who'd worked too many hours and dreamed too little. He almost turned around, but then he remembered Liam's drawing, "Me and Daddy, best team ever." That tiny piece of paper gave him courage. He took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The bell above the entrance chimed softly. Olivia looked up. Their eyes met. Her first reaction wasn't annoyance or pity. It was surprise, followed by something gentler. "Daniel?" she asked, her voice calm and warm. He nodded, brushing the snow from his hair. "I'm so sorry I'm late. Something came up with my son, and—" "You have a son," she interrupted softly. Daniel hesitated, unsure if that was good or bad to admit. "Yeah, he's 7. Best kid in the world." Olivia's smile grew, and for a brief moment, her eyes softened in a way that told him she understood more than she let on. "That's actually kind of wonderful," she said quietly. He blinked, surprised. "You don't mind?" She shook her head. "Why would I? Being a parent is the hardest and most selfless job in the world." "I admire that." Her tone was so genuine, so kind, that Daniel felt something loosen inside him, the heavy knot of self-doubt he'd been carrying all evening. They sat down. The waitress refilled Olivia's coffee and brought Daniel a hot cup of his own. For a few minutes, neither spoke much. The air between them was filled with the soft hum of Christmas music and the clinking of dishes. Then Olivia broke the silence. "So, what made you agree to a blind date on Christmas Eve?" He chuckled nervously. "I guess, curiosity. And maybe the fact that I've forgotten what it feels like to talk to someone who isn't under 4 feet tall." She laughed, a warm, graceful laugh that made his chest tighten in the best way. "Fair enough. And you?" he asked. Olivia stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "I've spent the last few years building a company. It's been successful, but lonely. My assistant thought I needed to meet someone who wasn't from a business meeting or charity event. So here I am." Daniel raised a brow. "A company, huh? What kind of company?" She smiled faintly. "Reynolds Tech. Maybe you've heard of it." His hand froze midair. "Wait. The Reynolds Tech. The one that makes those smart home devices?" "Guilty." He laughed in disbelief. "Wow, you're the CEO." She nodded, almost shyly. "Don't let that scare you off." He shook his head. "I'm not scared. Just impressed. You're the kind of person people write about in magazines. I fix engines for a living. My biggest achievement this week was getting an old Ford to start in one go." Olivia smiled again. "Maybe I'd rather have someone who can fix what's broken, than someone who only knows how to buy new things." Her words lingered. They spent the next 2 hours talking about life, dreams, grief, and second chances. Daniel told her about losing his wife, about the nights he'd read stories to Liam just to hide his own sadness. Olivia shared how her success had come with a cost: empty holidays, missed birthdays, and a home that never quite felt alive. By the time the diner was closing, both of them felt something they hadn't felt in a long time: seen. Outside, the snow had thickened. The world looked softer, quieter. As they stood by the door, Olivia slipped a small card into his hand, her phone number. "Merry Christmas, Daniel," she said gently. "Next time, don't worry about being late. The right person is worth waiting for." He smiled, heart pounding. "Then I hope you don't mind waiting again someday." She laughed softly, her breath forming clouds in the winter air. "We'll see." And as she walked away into the falling snow, Daniel realized something. Maybe, just maybe, Christmas miracles didn't come wrapped in ribbons or boxes. Sometimes, they came in the form of a stranger who waited. The next morning, Daniel woke up to the sound of his son laughing in the living room. For the first time in years, that sound didn't just make him smile, it filled him with hope. He sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, and thought about the night before. The snow, the laughter, the way Olivia's eyes glimmered when she spoke about her dreams. He couldn't remember the last time someone had made him feel that seen, that comfortable, that enough. For a moment, he let himself believe that maybe something good was finally beginning. Over the next few days, he kept Olivia's card in his wallet, right behind a folded picture of Liam. He would take it out sometimes, At the gas station, during his lunch breaks at the garage, or late at night when the world was quiet. He'd run his thumb across her name and number, thinking about calling, but every time, he stopped himself. "She's too good for me," he whispered to the empty room one night. "She's a CEO. I'm just a guy trying to pay rent." And so, the card stayed there, a small piece of possibility he was too scared to touch. But fate, as always, had other plans. 2 weeks later, Daniel was sitting at work when his coworker Jenny walked by with a grin. "So," she asked, "how was it? I heard from Olivia that you finally showed up." Daniel froze, a wrench still in his hand. "Wait, she told you?" Jenny laughed. "Of course, she said you were sweet, funny, and a little nervous. But she liked that about you." He tried to hide the blush creeping up his neck. "She said that." "She did," Jenny said, crossing her arms. "And she said she's still waiting for you to call her, Daniel." That night, he finally gathered the courage. After putting Liam to bed, he sat by the kitchen table, stared at the phone for 10 long minutes, then dialed. Olivia Reynolds, her voice answered, calm and confident, just as he remembered. He swallowed. "Hey, it's Daniel. From the diner." There was a pause, followed by a soft laugh. "You finally called." From that night on, they spoke often. Not every day, but enough to feel the quiet pull of something growing between them. They talked about everything. About her company, her childhood, her love for snow even though she'd grown up in California. About his late wife, his son's fascination with dinosaurs, and the way the stars looked different in winter. Sometimes, Olivia would call while Daniel was cooking dinner. Liam would giggle in the background, and Olivia would say, "You've got the cutest sous chef in town." Other times, Daniel would call late at night after finishing a long shift, his voice tired but peaceful. "You know," he told her once, "you make the world feel a little less heavy." And Olivia, who'd spent most of her adult life hearing about profits and projections, realized that his words were worth more than any business deal she'd ever made. Soon, their calls turned into small get-togethers, coffee dates at the same diner, walks in the park, visits to the Christmas market with Liam in tow. Olivia didn't mind that their dates weren't fancy. In fact, she seemed to prefer it that way. One evening, as they watched Liam chase snowflakes near a park bench, Daniel looked at her and said quietly, "You know, I think he likes you." Olivia smiled. "I think I like him too." Her words were light, but they carried a warmth Daniel hadn't felt in years. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future where he wasn't alone, where someone might love him not in spite of his struggles, but because of them. But life has a way of testing hope just when it begins to bloom. One chilly morning, Daniel arrived at work to find the garage doors locked and a notice taped to the front. "Closed permanently. Thank you for your years of service." His stomach dropped. His paycheck was due that week. Rent, bills, groceries, everything depended on that job. He stood there for a long time, staring at the paper as the wind tugged at its corners. Around him, the world kept moving, cars honking, people hurrying, but Daniel felt frozen in place. That night, he sat in the dark kitchen with a cup of cold coffee, staring at the table. Liam slept in the next room, unaware that their future had just been shaken again. He thought about calling Olivia, about telling her the truth. But then he pictured her world, the glass offices, the polished shoes, the expensive watches, and imagined her looking at him with pity. That was something he couldn't bear. So, he didn't call. Days turned into weeks. Olivia's texts went unanswered. Her calls went straight to voicemail. She told herself he was just busy, but the longer the silence stretched, the more her chest ached with worry. Christmas drew near again. It had been almost a year since their first meeting, the night he'd walked into the diner, late and nervous, and somehow stolen her heart. On Christmas Eve, Olivia sat alone at that same booth by the window. The same red coat, the same slice of apple pie, the same cold cup of coffee. She looked out at the snow falling softly beyond the glass and whispered, "Maybe this is what faith looks like, waiting even when you don't know why." The clock ticked closer to 9. The bell above the door chimed. Her breath caught. There he was, standing in the doorway, dusted with snow, wearing that same old jacket, his eyes searching for her. He looked exhausted, but when he saw her, he smiled. That same crooked, boyish smile that made everything else fade away. "I'm late again," he said, a little breathless. Olivia rose from her seat slowly, shaking her head, her eyes glistening. "No," she whispered, "you're right on time." Daniel walked toward her, nervous and relieved all at once. "I didn't want to disappear. I lost my job. I didn't want you to see me at my worst." Olivia stepped closer. "Daniel, don't you get it? You were never less in my eyes. You were always more." He blinked, stunned. "You mean that?" She smiled softly, reaching out to take his hand. "Of course, I didn't fall for your job, or your jacket, or your timing. I fell for the man who showed up even when life made it hard." Tears filled his eyes, and he laughed quietly, shaking his head. "You have no idea how much I needed to hear that." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a hand-carved snowflake made of wood, rough around the edges, a little uneven, but beautiful in its imperfection. "I made this," he said. "It's not fancy, but I wanted to give you something that lasts longer than flowers." Olivia's voice trembled. "It's perfect." She took the snowflake and held it close. Around them, the diner lights glowed warm against the falling snow. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The world outside felt quiet, peaceful, whole. Then Daniel whispered, "You waited for me." Again, she smiled through tears. Sometimes love is just waiting, even when the world tells you to give up. Outside, snowflakes danced in the wind, and inside, two hearts finally found their rhythm again. Not in perfection, but in patience, kindness, and second chances. That Christmas Eve, in a little diner on Maple Street, a poor single dad and a patient CEO proved that love doesn't always come on time, but it always comes when it's meant to. And as the night grew still, and laughter replaced the ache of waiting, one truth remained clear. The right heart will always wait.